Hello and welcome to my channel. I was looking at the John Does and we're going to go over some of the ones today, including Valerie Mack. So here we have a reconstruction of the victim, and this one was discovered April 4th, 2011. Gilgo Beach, Suffolk County, New York. Hopefully I'm pronouncing all that right. Estimated dated death 5 to 10 years prior, so he would have died 2001 to 2006 maybe. Skeletal remains, I don't know how they do the reconstructions. I don't know. Homicide by blow to the head, 17 to 23 years old. Asian male. Based on the victim's clothing, it is possible that the descendant may have lived as a woman. 5'6". They don't know his weight, his hair color, or his eye color. The victim may have had a muscular skeletal disorder that affected how the descendant walked. They have the dentals available. They have the DNA available. He had women's clothing. The description's not there. It says, the descendant believed to be the victim of the Long Island serial killer was discovered at Ocean Parkway, located in Gilgo Beach, New York, in April 2011. The remains were of an unidentified toddler matched through DNA to blank were found nearby, along with additional remains linked to, and it gives you the numbers. I don't want to read all those. It is possible that this particular victim was a sex worker and may have been killed after it was found out by the killer that the victim was not a cisgender woman. After they found out he wasn't, a woman, he was a male. Additional victims believed to have been murdered by the same killer, and it gives you the list of them, and where you can click on them if you go here, along with the other three listed above. So there's several victims here. And then we have this one. It's an unidentified female, 1 to 14 years prior, skeletal homicide, 1 to 4 years old. Dated discovery, April 4th, 2011, Gilgo Beach. Estimated date of death, 1 to 14 years prior, 1 to 4 years old, maybe black or mixed ancestry, possible female. Dentals available, DNA available, jewelry, it shows you the jewelry. An unidentified toddler was discovered in April 2011 at Ocean Parkway in Gilgo Beach, New York. And then it lists all the other remains that were found nearby. In late 2016, DNA testing concluded that this victim was likely a child of the 151, whose torso was discovered in Lakeview, Nassau County, New York, in June of 1997. And there's other ones that were victims of the same serial killer. So, and then we have this one. This is an unidentified female, and it shows the tattoos and the clothing. And a bin containing remains, pillowcase and towel with the remains, bracelet found, additional remains, necklace and earrings found with the victim's child. So, and this one, the estimated date of death was no more than 3 days prior. So they found her June 28, 1997, and they believe that she would have died the June 25th to June 28th. Estimated age, 16 to 30 years old, black, possibly mixed race, female. She had an abdominal scar, possibly from a C-section, a tattoo of peach in the shape of a heart with a bite taken out. You can see it right here, because there's and 2 drips falling from it, and the core was located on her left breast. 2 gold bracelets were found with additional remains of the victim located in 2011. 116-inch gold-colored chain and 2 gold-colored hoop earrings were discovered with the child found in Gilgo Beach. She was found in a Rubbermaid container along with a red towel and a floral pillowcase. On June 28, 1997, a dismembered body was discovered in a wooded area of Hempstead Lake State Park, Lakeview, New York. Both arms, head, and legs below the knee were severed and have not been located. The torso was found on the west side of Lake Drive, about 200 yards north of Peninsula Boulevard. With no leads to the woman's identity, the police published a picture of the approximate 2-inch wide tattoo in a national tattoo magazine in the hopes of finding the artist who did the work. They received a call from a man in Connecticut who claimed he remembered giving the tattoo to a woman. The artist said he remembered the customer as a young black woman about 18 or 19 years old who was accompanied by 2 women, an aunt and a cousin. During the session, he also claimed she told him she was from either Bronx or Long Island and that she was in Connecticut because she was having trouble with her boyfriend at the time. It is possible the woman had other tattoos on her arms or lower legs that the killer did not want found. On December 13, 2016, it was announced that the DNA testing had indicated an unidentified toddler found on Gilgo Beach, a known area where the Long Island serial killer disposed of their victims, was likely the child of this victim, who is now believed to be one of the unidentified serial killer's early murders. The testing also indicated that the skeletal remains located in Jones Beach State Park in 2011 were also this victim. I wonder if the serial killer is the boyfriend that she was trying to get away from. I don't know. Let's see. And this one's been identified, so, which is very interesting. Date of discovery, November 19, 2000. Manorville, Suffolk County, New York, weeks prior. Not recognizable, near complete or complete skeleton homicide. 18 to 40 years old, white female, 5'2", weight unknown, brown hair, eye color unknown. Right and left nasal bones have been fractured and healed. Dentals available, DNA. The victim's nude torso was found in pieces wrapped in plastic bags in a wooded area of Manorville on November 11, 2000. Her head, hands, and leg have been cut off almost 11 years later on November 4, 2011. Her head, hands, and right foot were found in a plastic bag in the vicinity of Ocean Parkway on Gilgo Beach. Investigators believe she was a prostitute in the New York City area. She is known as Manorville Jane Doe and is one of 11 victims found along the remote Long Island Highway. 10 of the victims are believed to be the victims of a serial killer. So that's what she looks like in the picture. Let's see what she looks like in real life. This is her. Now we'll look at her eyes and we'll go back and look at the eyes of the other person. So yeah, and then the nose. They did the nose really well. And the mouth. And the chin. And the chin and the forehead. And the shape of the face. So if you want to see, this is who she was. Right? Okay. Valerie Mack. And this is where she went missing, and this is where they found her 3 hours and 33 minutes away. She went missing from here, and she was found 3 hours and 33 minutes away. Interesting number, isn't it? 4 ways to travel via train, bus, car, but 3 hours and 33 minutes away. And that's who she ended up being. And so, I may not be able to read this page because there's so many ads that it will make my voice go blinkety-blink, probably. But one of the seemingly anonymous victims of an elusive serial killer, killers known as the Long Island serial killer and the Gilgo Beach killer, has been identified. So if my voice is blinking back and forth because of the ads, you can just pause it and read it. A partial set of female remains were found along New York's Gilgo Beach in 2011 during the continuing search for Shannon Gilbert, whose disappearance kicked off the gruesome discovery that there was an apparent serial murderer on the loose on Long Island. Another set of unidentified partial remains had been found in 2000 in Manorville, according to the Suffolk County Police Department. Those remains turned out to be set found in 2011 belonging to Jane Doe number 6, and also known as Manorville Jane Doe. After nearly a decade of anonymity, the Suffolk County Police Department announced on May 22nd that they had identified the woman. On Thursday, they revealed her name to the public, 24-year-old Valerie Mack. And what was the age that they guessed that she was on here? 18 to 40. Okay. Who went missing in 2000 while living in Philadelphia. So she was, according to police, her family had last seen her in the spring of 2000 in the Port Republic area of New Jersey, which we decided was a 3-hour and 33-minute drive. Wow. The identification of Mack appears to signal progress in the mysterious case. In all, 10 victims, I thought there was 11, some of whom still remain unidentified, have been attributed to the unknown killer or killers. There are theories that an additional 6 victims in the area are linked to the Long Island serial killer. And there's their photos. As of Thursday afternoon press conference, Suffolk Police Commissioner Geraldine Hart credited genetic genealogy for assisting in Mack's identification. DNA was uploaded to genealogy database, which provided matches with some of Mack's relatives and ultimately her son, who is now in his 20s. Through her son, police were able to positively identify the remains as Mack. Hart had announced in January that investigators would be utilizing new technology in the search for the killer or killers. The commissioner said Thursday that Mack had no known ties to Long Island and said investigators are looking into why she was there during that time period. Mack was working as an escort at the time of her death, and Hart explained Mack had been arrested 3 times on prostitution charges. While many of the Gilgo Beach victims were sex workers who advertised on Craigslist, Hart told Oxygen.com that Craigslist was in its infancy in 2000, and investigators will be looking into whether she advertised services online. Hart also noted that Mack went by the alias Melissa Taylor during at least one prior arrest. Valerie Mack was left without parents at an early age, Hart said, explaining that Mack had been in foster care before she was adopted. Mack was living with a boyfriend when she vanished. She had a normal life, Hart said. At the news conference discussing the last time Mack's family saw her, nothing really stood out. She just didn't come home one day. Investigators are looking into why Mack wasn't officially reported missing at the time, Hart said. We have a really strong team here that is aggressively pursuing every avenue that is open to us, Hart said Thursday. So she wasn't even listed as missing at the time. Hart seemed determined to show that the victims are the priority now. We're going to keep moving forward, she said. We're not going to stop. We're going to make every attempt to solve this. And I don't see a lot of advertisements, so this one might not blink out too bad. So then you can see there's other girls. And I don't know who those are, so. And this one's not coming up. There we go. This is discovered March 3rd, 2007. Mamaroneck, Winchester County, New York, days prior. So they just died, probably early March. Not recognizable, traumatic injuries, homicide. age 35 to 50, possibly Hispanic or black. 5'7" to 6'1", 180 to 200 pounds. Small tattoo of 2 red cherries on a green stem on her right breast. Pink toenail polish. There's a picture of her tattoo. Gray champion sweatpants, a tanner cream colored voice long sleeve shirt, and red Coconut Republic camisole bearing labels in Spanish. Underwire bra size 38B. On March 3, 2007, a suitcase washed ashore at Harbor Island Park containing the torso of a woman. The torso had stab wounds. About 3 weeks later, on March 21st, a leg was found off Cold Spring Harbor. A day later, on March 22nd, another leg was found off Cove Neck along Nassau County's Gold Coast. Each leg had pink toenail polish on some toes. DNA confirmed the legs and torso belonged to the same woman. The dark blue or black suitcase is sold exclusively at Walmart. Police also found small scraps of paper tucked away in crevices of the suitcase. When pieced together, it looks like a calendar with the Spanish word cinco and the phrase begin to live. Since the torso floated onto the beach as storm-fed floods hit the regions, authorities have said the remains could have come from almost anywhere. It is possible that this individual was a victim of the Long Island serial killer, also known as the Gilgo Beach Killer and the Craigslist Ripper, whose crimes began apparently in 1996 and lasted at least through 2013. And then they have the list of the other victims that you could click on to go see. And then we have this one, April 20th, 1996, estimated date of death, 1996, partial remains with soft tissues, homicide, location Blue Point Beach, Suffolk County, New York, age 18 to 50 years old, white female. They don't have her height or her weight. Her right lower leg has a 3.5-inch scar on the lateral mid-leg area, 1-inch linear scar on the lateral mid-lower leg. I don't want to read all that. There's a 2-inch surgical scar with adjacent suture scars on her ankle. She may have had surgery on her left ankle, red polish on all toenails. So she might have broke her ankle at some point and had to have surgery, right? DNA is available. People walking along Blue Point Beach on Fire Island in the vicinity of Davis Park discovered the victim's legs on April 20th, 1996. The legs had been wrapped in plastic. On April 12, 2011, the victim's skull was found off of Ocean Parkway west of Tobay Beach in Nassau County. She is known as Fire Island Jane Doe and is one of the 11 victims found along the remote Long Island Highway. 10 of the victims are believed to be the victims of a serial killer. And then they show you the other ones. So, and this one might blink out really bad, so I don't know if I'm going to read this one. I had it open, but see how many ads there are. You can pause it and read it. So if there's a lot of ads, it's not even going to be worth it. Authorities said, see, there it goes. Authorities said Friday they had identified the skeletal remains of a woman who was murdered. Yeah, I think there's too many ads. So, you can pause it and read it. I just can't. The black leather belt may have belonged to the suspect. See, and they're showing it. It says, we do not believe this item was handled. Wait, we do believe this item was handled by the suspect and did not belong to any of the victims. And the belt shows the initials HM or WH. depending on the perspective. So they're thinking that that might be the killer's initials, I guess. But I don't know. Like I said, you can go find this and read it. There's just so many ads. I'll show you where it is right there. And my voice is probably breaking out during that one, but I just wanted to show you that belt and then give you the web address if you want to go read it. So, and I'm going to skip this and go ahead and go to here. Craigslist serial redirects here for other users. See Internet Homicide. The Long Island serial killer, also referred to as LISK, the Gilgo Beach killer, and the Craigslist Ripper, is an unidentified suspected serial killer who is believed to have murdered between 10 and 16 people over a period of nearly 20 years and to have disposed of their bodies in areas on the south shore of Long Island, New York. Most of the known victims were sex sellers who advertised on Craigslist. The victims' remains were found over a period of months in 2010 and 2011 after the disappearance of Shannon Gilbert resulted in a police search of the area along Ocean Parkway, near the remote beach towns of Gilgo and Oak Beach in Suffolk County. The remains of 4 victims, the Gilgo 4, were found within a quarter of a mile of each other near Gilgo Beach in December 2010. 6 more sets of remains were found in March and April 2011 in Suffolk County and Nassau County. Police believe the latter sets of remains predate the 4 bodies found in December 2010. Gilbert's remains were found a year after the remains of the Gilgo 4 were discovered. Her cause of death remains contested, with police claiming accidental drowning, while an independent autopsy determined possible strangulation. The first discovery of human remains was made by the side of the Ocean Parkway in Oak Beach on December 11, 2010. The investigation was prompted by the search for Shannon Gilbert, a 24-year-old sex worker who had disappeared in the area in May that year after fleeing from a client's home and making a 23-minute-long emergency call to 911, saying, "They are trying to kill me." A month after her disappearance, the Suffolk Police Department's Missing Persons Bureau asked Officer John Malia to search for Gilbert with his trained cadaver dog, a German Shepherd named Blue, over the course of the summer of 2010. Malia unsuccessfully searched the gated beach community where Gilbert had last been seen. He made a new attempt at a search on December 11th, staying close to the shoulder of the parkway. Malia based his choice of search area on FBI data indicating that dump bodies are frequently close to the roadways. Despite thick vegetation and a light layer of snow, the cadaver dog alerted to a scent which the pair tracked to a skeleton in a disintegrating burlap bag. The remains were later identified as Melissa Barthelme's. Police discovered 3 additional bodies while searching the scene for further evidence. The bodies of 4 victims, Maureen Brainard, Melissa Bartholomew, Megan Waterman, and Amberlynn Costello, were found approximately 500 feet from each other. In March 2011, the partial remains of Jessica Taylor were found along Ocean Parkway. 8 years earlier, in 2003, Taylor's partial remains had been found in Manorville, New York, in Suffolk County. The next month, in April 2011, police discovered 3 additional sets of remains: an unidentified female toddler, an unidentified Asian person, and Valerie Mack, whose partial remains, like those of Jessica Taylor, had been previously found in Manorville years earlier in November 2000. 2 more bodies were found in Nassau County: an unidentified woman whose partial remains had previously been found on Fire Island in 1996, and an unidentified woman whose distinctive tattoo of peaches, who was later found to be the mother of the unidentified toddler found in Suffolk. On March 9, 2011, police speculated that because of the similarities in the cases, Valerie Mack, who at the time was unidentified, and Jessica Taylor may have been murdered by a second separate killer. On November 29, 2011, however, police announced that they believed one person to be responsible for all 10 murders and that the perpetrator is almost certainly from Long Island. The single killer theory stems from common characteristics between the condition of the remains and forensic evidence related to the bodies. In 2011, Suffolk County Police announced a $25,000 reward for information leading to an arrest in the Long Island murders. Shannon Gilbert's remains were finally located in Oak Beach in December 2011. 19 months after her disappearance, the cause of her death is contested. All the murders remain unsolved. On December 10, 2015, Suffolk County Police Commissioner Tim Sinney, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, announced that the FBI had officially joined the investigation. The announcement came one day after former police chief James Burke was indicted for civil rights violations and conspiracy. Burke, who resigned from the department in October 2015, was said to have blocked FBI involvement in the LISK case for years. The FBI had previously assisted in the search for victims, but had never officially been part of the investigation. In November 2016, Burke was sentenced to 46 months in federal prison for assault and conspiracy. On September 12, 2017, Suffolk County Prosecutor Robert Biancavilla from the County District, and forgive me if I'm not pronouncing them right, from the County District Attorney's Office announced that John Bittrolff, a carpenter from Manorville, Long Island, was a suspect in at least one of the LISK murders. Bittrolff had been convicted in May of that year of the murders of 2 sex workers in 1993 and 1994. On January 16, 2020, Suffolk County Police Commissioner Geraldine Hart released images of a belt found at the crime scenes with the letters HM or WH, depending on the orientation of the belt, embossed in black leather. The belt had been found during the initial investigation near Ocean Parkway in Gilgo Beach. Police believed that the belt was handled by the perpetrator and that it had not belonged to any of the victims. The police revealed few details about the belt's evidentiary value and would not comment on exactly where it had been found. It was also announced that the new scientific evidence was being used in the investigation and that they had launched GilgoNews.com, a website enabling the department to share news and receive tips. GilgoNews.com. Regarding the investigation. Identification of Valerie Mack through genetic genealogy. In 2019, a proposal was made to use genetic genealogy to identify the unidentified victims and possibly the killer in the LISK case. On May 28, 2020, Jane Doe number 6 was identified as Valerie Mack, who also went by the name Melissa Taylor. You know, and we care more about the victims, their rights, and finding out who they are than we do about the killer and his rights. I'm sorry, but all these victims, I think it's perfectly fine that they used the DNA evidence to find out who she was. The Gilgo 4. Maureen Brainard-Barnes. Brainard-Barnes of Norwich, Connecticut, was 25 when she disappeared. She was last seen on July 9, 2007, saying she planned to spend the day in New York City. She was never seen again. From Connecticut. Brainard-Barnes, a mother of 2, worked as a paid escort via Craigslist to pay the mortgage on her house. She had been out of the sex industry for 7 months, but she returned to the work in order to pay her bills after getting an eviction notice. Her body was found December 2010. Shortly after her disappearance, a friend of Brainard-Barnes, Sarah Carnes, received a phone call from a man on an unfamiliar number. The man claimed that he had just seen Brainard-Barnes and that she was alive and staying at a whorehouse in Queens. He refused to identify himself and could not tell Carnes the location of the house. He told Carnes He would call back and give her the address, but never called back. Carnes said that the man had no discernible New York or Boston accent. At the time of her disappearance, she was working at the Super 8 Motel in Manhattan. On the night of July 9, 2007, she called a friend in Connecticut and told her that she was planning on meeting a client outside of the motel. Like many of the victims, Brainard-Barnes was very petite, 4'11", 105 pounds. She had been strangled. So the man that killed her might have been staying at the Super 8 Motel in Manhattan. But I'm sure they've looked into that. He could have been staying there that night or the night before. Bartholomew, 24, of Erie County, New York. Melissa. She went missing July 10, 2009. She'd been living in the Bronx and worked as an escort through Craigslist. On the night she went missing, she met a client, deposited $900 in her bank account, and attempted to call an old boyfriend but did not get through. Beginning 1 week later and lasting for 5 weeks, her teenage sister Amanda received a series of vulgar, mocking, and insulting calls from a man who may have been the killer using Melissa Bartholomew's cell phone. The caller asked if Amanda was a whore like her sister. The calls became increasingly disturbing and eventually culminated in the caller telling Amanda that her sister was dead and that he was going to watch her rot. Police traced some of the calls to Madison Square Garden, Midtown Manhattan, and Mesa. I don't know how to pronounce that at all. But were unable to determine who was making the calls. Bartholomew's mother noted that there were a lot of calls to Manorville from her daughter's phone around the time of her disappearance. In September 2017, John Bittrolff, a carpenter from that town, was convicted of 2 other murders, was named as a suspect in the LISK case. We'll put him on the phone and let her listen to him. Melissa was 4'10", and she had been strangled. That is crazy. John Bittrolff. Waterman, 22, of South Portland, Maine, went missing on June 6, 2010 after placing advertisements on Craigslist as an escort, Megan. The previous day, she had told her 20-year-old boyfriend that she was going out and would call him later. At the time of her disappearance, she was staying at a motel in New York, 15 miles northeast of Gilgo Beach. Her body was recovered in December 2010. Waterman was a mother of 1 and had become a victim of sex trafficking. She was 5'5". She had been strangled. So, see? Strangled. So I'm going to guess that the one that they think drowned or may have been strangled was probably strangled. And that Bittrolff seems like a good person to think that maybe it was him. Amberlynn Costello, age 27, of West Babylon, New York, a town 10 miles north of Gilgo Beach, was a sex worker and heroin user who went missing September 2, 2010. That night, she reportedly went to meet a stranger who had called her several times and offered her $1,500 for her services. Born in Charlotte and raised in, that's why they're traveling. Raised in North Carolina, Costello was living in the West Babylon, New York when she disappeared. Her family believed that she was in a residential drug rehabilitation center, so she wasn't reported missing right away. And then she stopped responding to messages and phone calls. Prior to moving to West Babylon, Costello had been living with her second husband in Clearwater, Florida, and was working as a waitress. A strong student, Costello's drug addiction began when she was a teenager. She had been sexually assaulted by a neighbor when she was only 6 years old. She was 4'11" and weighed approximately 100 pounds. She had also been strangled. So then there were 4 more sets of remains were discovered on March 29th and April 4th of 2011. All the remains were found in another area off the parkway near Oak Beach and Gilgo Beach, within 2 miles and to the east of those found December 2010. The newly discovered victims were Jessica Taylor, Valerie Mack, an unidentified woman dubbed as Jane Doe number 3, or Peaches, and an unidentified toddler who was the daughter of Peaches. Suffolk police subsequently expanded the search area up to the Nassau County border looking for more victims. 2 further sets of remains were discovered April 11, 2011, after the search expanded into Nassau County. They were found about a mile apart, approximately 5 miles west of those found in December. One of the set of remains belonged to a victim now thought to be a trans woman, dubbed Asian male. Police said the victim had been dead for between 5 and 10 years. The other remains, those of Jane Doe number 7, whose partial remains have been discovered on Fire Island in 1996. Jessica Taylor was 20 years old. She was living in Manhattan when she went missing July 21, 2003. On July 26, 2003, her naked and dismembered torso, missing its head and hands, was discovered 45 miles east of Gilgo Beach in Manorville, New York. These remains were identified by DNA analysis later that year. Taylor's torso was found atop a pile of scrap wood at the end of the paved access road off Halsey Manor Road, just north of where it crosses the Long Island Expressway. Plastic sheeting was found underneath the torso, and a tattoo on her body had been mutilated with a sharp instrument. Further remains found on March 29, 2010 at Gilgo included the remains of a skull, a pair of hands, and a forearm were matched to Taylor. She had worked in Washington, D.C. and Manhattan as a sex worker. Taylor was last seen working around the Port Authority bus terminal in Manhattan between July 18th and July 22nd, 2003. Valerie Mack, Melissa Taylor, Manorville Jane Doe, and Jane Doe number 6. Mack, 24, also known as Melissa Taylor, was living in Philadelphia and working as an escort when she went missing in 2000. Like many of the victims, she was small in stature at approximately 5 foot and weighing approximately 100 pounds. Mack's partial remains were discovered in Manorville November 19, 2000, but were not identified until 2020, 20 years later. Her torso was found wrapped in garbage bags and dumped in the woods near the intersection of Halsey Manor Road and Mill Road, adjacent to the set of power lines in nearby Power Line Access Road. A head, right foot, hands found on April 4, 2011 were at first determined to have belonged to an unidentified victim dubbed Jane Doe number 6. It was later determined that they belonged to the same woman whose torso had been found in 2000. Her right foot had been cut off high above the ankle, possibly to conceal an identifying marker tattoo. On May 28, 2020, police announced that the remains had been identified as Valerie Mack, who had last been seen by family members in the spring or summer of 2000 in the area of Port Republic, New Jersey. The dismembered remains of Valerie Mack and Jessica Taylor were both disposed of in similar manner and in the same part of Manorville, suggesting a link. On September 20, 2011, police released composite sketches of the 2 unidentified victims, dubbed Asian Male and Jane Doe number 6, whose remains had been found in March and April 2011, as well as photos of jewelry found on the remains of a female toddler and her mother, Jane Doe number 3. Found on April 4th and 11th, respectively. One of the sets of remains found in Nassau County on April 11th was later identified as the mother of the toddler. And then it talks about, this is so long. This talks about Peaches, April 11, 2011. Police in Nassau County discovered dismembered skeletal human remains inside a plastic bag near Jones Beach State Park. The victim was dubbed Jane Doe number 3. DNA analysis later positively indicated that the remains belonged to a woman whose torso had been found in Hempstead Lakes State Park 14 years earlier, on June 28, 1997. The dismembered torso of an unidentified young African-American woman was found at Hempstead Lake State Park in the town of Lakeview, New York. The torso was found in a green plastic Rubbermaid container, which was dumped next to a road along the west side of the lake. Investigators reported that the victim had a tattoo on her left breast of the heart-shaped peach with a bite out of it and 2 drips falling. And it was, yeah. In December 2016, Peaches and Jane Doe number 3 were positively identified as the same person. DNA analysis also identified Peaches as the mother of baby Doe, and she was found wearing gold jewelry similar to that of her daughter. Hold on one second. Sorry, I needed a drink. And then there's John Doe and the Asian male, and we've discussed him and read about him. He was wearing women's clothing. Then there's Jane Doe number 7, Fire Island Jane Doe. And you can pause that and read it because there's just so much. And then there's the discovery of Shannon Gilbert's body, found in a marsh about a half-mile from where she had disappeared only. So, and some of her clothing and belongings have been found there. She was last seen banging on a resident's door and screaming for help before running off into the night. She made an emergency 911 call that night, saying she feared for her life. Police have stated the death of Gilbert. See, that makes me wonder if it wasn't that police officer that they said was trying to block the FBI's involvement, because she's calling 911 for help. Why didn't she get away? Why didn't they help her? They're saying that Gilbert, an escort whose disappearance triggered the search, is not related to the Long Island serial killer case. But her mother strongly advocated for this theory that Shannon Gilbert had been murdered by the serial killer. I would think so. But I don't know why she didn't get away. Oh, and here's a timeline. April 20th, 1996. Fire Island Jane Doe number 7. Oh, this is not when they died. This is when they're found. I would like a timeline showing, when they died, so. But there's a timeline. 1996, 1997. This just keeps going and keeps going. Yeah, that's so sad. So there's a timeline of everything we were reading through. And I don't want to sit there and read the whole timeline, so I'm just going to scroll through it for you. It's good to have a timeline, and then if you want a different kind of timeline, you can also make your own timeline. And then there's other possible victims. Tina Elizabeth Foglia. I don't remember reading about her yet. 19-year-old Tina Foglia was last seen alive in the early morning hours, February 1st, 1982, at the Hammerhead's rock music venue on Sunrise Highway. She had hitchhiked from her home to the venue to see a friend performing with the Queens-based band Equinox. Her remains were discovered by the Department of Transportation workers on February 3rd on the shoulder of the State Parkway. Her dismembered body, which had been placed in 3 separate plastic garbage bags, was found a few miles north of Robert Moses Causeway, which leads to Gilgo Beach and Oak Beach. A diamond ring that Foglia was known to wear was missing, and the DNA of an unknown male was found on the garbage bags. Police have not ruled out the possibility that Tina Foglia was an early victim of the Long Island serial killer, but have stated that a connection is not active avenue. I would think she is definitely one. Then it talks about Shannon Maria Gilbert. Didn't we read about her? Yeah, over and over and over. She was calling saying there was somebody after her. She was screaming for help before running off into the night. After 19 months of searching, they found her remains in a marsh half a mile from where she was last seen. In May 2012, the examiners ruled that Gilbert accidentally drowned after entering the marsh? I don't think so. They believe that she was in a drug-induced panic and have concluded that hers was a death. I don't think so. In 2012, a lawsuit was filed by her mother against the police department in hopes of getting more answers. Oh, see? And then somebody agreed to conduct an independent autopsy, and that's when they found she had been strangled, I bet you. Yes, her body was face up, which is not common for drowning victims. See? Because whoever did it didn't want to be caught. I wonder if they were involved with the investigation. See, things like that make you think, why would they try to say she drowned when she's face up? And then there's damage to her hyoid bone, which is strangulation. Yeah. So she was strangled, she's face up. But yet they're trying to say she drowned and she's not involved in the other ones. See, I don't know. The whole thing, I don't know. Later that day, her young daughter, Sarah Elizabeth, was arrested and charged with the stabbing death of her murder. Of her mother. On May 6, 2020, the New York Supreme Court ordered Suffolk police to release her 911 recording, denying their request to withhold it after more than 10 years. The tapes were released to the Gilbert family estate. John Ray, a short time later. Under the court order, Ray is barred from discussing the specifics of the call. He did, however, comment that the nature of the calls contradict what Suffolk Police Department Vincent Stephen had described in earlier reports about the calls from that morning. Specifically, Gilbert's tone had been described as calm and no desperation. After reviewing the tapes, Ray claimed that was not true. So they're not letting him release the information? Oh. Andre Isaac was a professional drag queen known by a stage name Sugar Bear. He was 6.5 inches tall and was 25 years old when he disappeared in November 2002. His torso was found close to the boardwalk. His head was discovered by ice skaters. With a single bullet wound to the temple, his arms and legs were later found several miles away in plastic bags. Tanya Rush, 2008, age 39, was last seen around 3 a.m. walking towards a subway station in Brooklyn. Her dismembered body was found by a state road cleaning crew inside a black canvas suitcase, 2008, in plain sight of the Newbridge Road ramp leading to the westbound Southern State Parkway in Belmore, New York. Rush was a mother of 3 who had been a Salvation Army volunteer and had worked in telemarketer. She took up sex work to support a drug addiction. Rush was an African American and lived in the Van Dyke houses of Brownsville Public Housing Complex in Brooklyn, New York. Well, whoever did it, they may not be alive and they may be in prison now. Maybe they stopped because they're in jail or prison. If they stopped, or they died. On January 23, 2013, a woman walking her dog found human remains in a small patch of brush in a sandy area along the shore of the end of the Sheep Lane in Laddington near Oyster Bay. The skeletal remains showed signs of trauma and were wrapped in a particular type of material that police have not disclosed. The remains are believed to be those of a woman between the ages of 20 and 30 who was possibly Asian. She was wearing a 22-carat solid gold pig pendant, which may be related to the Chinese zodiac, Year of the Pig. The relative birth years are 1971, 1983, 1995, possibly suggesting the woman died at the age of 29. Investigators believe that her body had been dumped before Hurricane Sandy in 2012. Her case may be connected to the other 10 bodies found 32 miles away in and around Gilgo Beach, though unlike the other victims, her body was buried rather than left above ground. So it may not be the same person. And then it talks about 2007, the suitcase containing cherries. And then I trying to identify the killer. So the media speculated about a profile of the killer referred to by police as Joe C. According to New York Times, it's most likely a white male in his mid-20s to mid-40s who is very familiar with the South Shore of Long Island and has access to burlap sacks, which he uses to hold the bodies for disposal. He may have a detailed knowledge of law enforcement techniques, see, and perhaps ties to law enforcement, which has thus far helped him avoid detection. Newsday reporters speculate that the serial killer Joe Rifkin, a former resident of Long Island, may have been responsible for some of the older remains found in March. Yeah, I don't know. 4 of the victims' complete bodies have never been found. Rifkin denied having anything to do with recent discovered remains. And it talks about John Bittrolff, who's a suspect, and Joseph Brewer, who's a suspect. Or persons of interest. I guess he might just be a person of interest. James Burke, former Suffolk County Police Chief James Burke, was reported to have blocked FBI probe in the LISK case during the police chief. In November 2006, he was sentenced to 46. So, November 2016, have they had anybody killed since then? Burke violently assaulted a man in custody who had stolen a duffel bag from his police vehicle. The duffel bag contained sex toys, a pornographic DVD, and Viagra. Burke pleaded guilty in February 2016 to charges of a civil rights violation and conspiracy to obstruct justice. Thomas Spada, the then district attorney of Suffolk County, was convicted in 2019 of conspiracy to cover up Burke's violent assault. Christopher McPartland, who had been Suffolk County's top anti-corruption prosecutor, who was also convicted in the conspiracy. In December 2016, an attorney for Shannon Gilbert's family reported that an escort had stated that she suspected that Burke might be connected to the LISK cases. That's what I would think. If I was going to pick a main suspect, that's who it would be. It would be that person right there. Just because of trying to block the FBI. And then the other girl, all of a sudden they're saying she wasn't strangled, she drowned after she called 911. So I don't know. In December 2016, an attorney for Shannon Gilbert's family reported that an escort had stated that she suspected Burke might be connected to the LISK cases. The escort, who identified herself as Leanne, stated that at one party she had attended in April 2011. Yeah, and how old is he? Wonder how old he is. She had seen Burke drag a woman of Asian appearance by the hair to the ground. Leanne said that when she saw Burke at a later party in August 2011, she decided to engage in sexual activity with him. She described an experience in which Burke violently yanked her head during oral sex to the point where she began to tear up. Burke was unable to reach orgasm and proceeded to throw $300 to $400 at her afterwards. At the time, she was not a professional sex worker, and she states that this was the first time she was paid for sex. But he's violent, and he's trying to block the investigation. And I bet they stopped when he went. I don't know. What do you think? What do you think? What are your thoughts? There's so many different people it could be. What are your thoughts? But this is, sometimes people, not all people that work in the police field are bad. There's some really good people. But occasionally you'll find someone that will get a job to do that just so that they can do those things. Peter Hackett, 2 days after Gilbert's disappearance, Peter Hackett, a neighbor of Joseph Brewer, who was a former physician who had worked for Suffolk County as a police surgeon, phoned Shannon Gilbert's mother. Mary Gilbert later recounted that Hackett said that he was taking care of Shannon, that he ran a home for wayward, oh, wow, and that he had given her medication because she was, oh, no. Wow. What year was this? 2 days after Gilbert's disappearance, he called, saying he ran a home for wayward girls and that he had given her medication because she was distressed. 3 days later, he called her again, denying that he had any contact with her daughter and that he had previously phoned her. He had indeed called her. Investigators confirmed that he was the one who had indeed called her. The marshy area where Gilbert's remains were found was near his backyard, and her personal items and clothing were found directly behind his property in the marsh. Gilbert's family filed a wrongful death suit against Hackett in November 2012, claiming that he took Gilbert into his home that morning and administering drugs to her, facilitating her death. The lawsuit was dismissed because it could not be proven that he had administered the drugs. Wow. James Bissett. 2 days after Shannon Gilbert's remains were found, businessman James Bissett died by suicide in his car. One of Bissett's business was a plant nursery, which was the main supplier of burlap in the region. So maybe he didn't commit suicide. Maybe they said he committed suicide, but he had access to the burlap bags. Many of the victims were found wrapped in burlap bags. I wonder if more than one person was involved. Because here he can cut up the bodies. He's got the burlap bags. And he's a police chief. And, yeah. You know, you wonder maybe if there was more than one person involved. Maybe there was more than one killer instead of one killer. But I don't know. What are your thoughts on it? Because this person has access to the burlap bags. Maybe he knows who's using the burlap bags. Maybe he didn't kill them all. But maybe he was involved with this one. And maybe he was the one supplying the burlap bags to the killers. And maybe they didn't want to get caught. And maybe more than one person was involved. Anyway, and then there's Facebook, if you want to read the Facebook. So, and it talks about it. So there's some interesting information on Facebook as well. But this has been about an hour long. And you can pause this and read it if you want to. But, yeah. So they go over some of it as well. Oh, and this shows locations of the bodies. I like that. They're all right there. I do. I wonder if there was more than one person involved. And this has a lot of links where you can go to and read more about it as well. But then you wonder who did it. Did they stop? When did they stop? Did they stop when somebody went to prison? 2 days after her remains were found, he died by suicide in his car. And he had the burlap bags. See, he's not going to commit suicide. I don't know. Maybe he did. Maybe he's the killer, but I don't know. I would think that he's definitely involved. This guy, I would think he's involved. And I would also seem to think that maybe he's involved with at least one of them, if not more. And then he's got the burlap bags. So I wonder if there wasn't more than one person involved. I don't know, though. You know, it's hard to say. And I'm just guessing because I am not anybody that would know anything about it other than what I'm reading online. So I'm just guessing by what I'm reading online. So what do you think? Anyway, prayers. Don't forget to stop and pray for all the loved ones and all these people that are involved and have suffered and the people that have found these body parts and everyone that's going through this. Anyway, thank you so much for tuning in. Have a great day. Bye-bye.